I love being Catholic, but you give Mary too much attention. Every time you say Mary, why not say Jesus? Give him all the glory and honor. I'm so glad you asked that question because when I was a Protestant, I thought the exact same thing. The problem is when I was a Protestant, I believed that there was a pie. The pumpkin pie had 8 slices in it, and all 8 slices went to Jesus. Jesus alone. To Jesus alone. Jesus gets everything. All glory to Jesus. All glory and honor to Jesus. And then you look over at Catholics and they say, let's talk about Mary. And then you're like, you just took one of the 8 slices and gave it to Mary. And like, let's talk about the Pope. You just took a slice and gave it to the Pope. And you say, my priest, I go to confession to my priest. You just took a slice and gave it to your priest. And as you talk about Catholic devotion and Catholic life, as a Protestant, you're watching those 8 slices be passed around to angels and popes and Mary and Joseph and St. Anthony. And pretty soon you're like, there's only one slice left for Jesus. You Catholics have given 7 slices of pumpkin pie to all these other people, and yet Jesus is the Son of God and he gets one piece. That's wrong. You're saying don't give any slices to Mary. As a Protestant, as I studied Catholicism, I had an epiphany at one point. And I realized that I was looking at this question in terms of zero-sum theology. So I thought, okay, there's 8 slices of pie. We got to get all 8 slices to Jesus. But then I realized that Catholics don't think like that. It's not about a slice of pie with 8 slices. Instead, it is a model of participation. It is not a plus and minus game. It is a multiplication division game. I'll use an example from my own life. I met my wife, Joy, fell deeply in love with her, asked her to marry me. We got married. A year later, we had a baby, beautiful little boy, our firstborn son. When that baby was born, if you think about it like a pumpkin pie, it's not that I had 8 slices for Joy in my marriage. And then when the baby was born, I gave 1 slice to the baby, and now Joy got 7. Then a couple years later, Joy had twins, 2 little girls. It's not that my love for Joy was now 7 pieces of pie, and then I took 2 and gave those to the twins, so now Joy has 5 of my slices of my love, and then those 3 kids get 3 slices. Well, eventually we had 8 kids. The pie is gone. There is nothing left. But in the economy of love and in the economy of family, love magnifies. So what I found is when I married my wife and then we had a baby, I loved the baby, and then because of the baby, I loved Joy more. And then we had 2 more kids, twins. Instead of loving Joy 3/4 less than I had before, that multiplied my love for Joy even more. So that when we had 8 kids eventually, my love for my wife magnified, it multiplied. If I had thought about my love for my wife as pieces of pie, I would have robbed her and given to the kids, and I would have loved her less. But that's not actually how it works. As a matter of fact, I also began to love her parents, her mom and her dad, and her sisters, and then her sisters' husbands, and then their kids, and the whole family grew, and the love grew, and it magnified, and my love for my wife increased, despite all these extra people being brought in, and that is Catholicism. When a person gets to heaven and becomes a saint, it's not that God loves everyone in heaven 1% less because there's now another person, 1 less sliver of pie because there's a new saint, and then another saint, and then another saint, and then God's love is getting whittled away. No, God's love magnifies. For every new saint, there is more majesty, more glory. So it's kind of like saying to me, hey, quit talking about your kids, talk about your wife. You're taking away from your wife when you talk about how lovely your kids are. No, actually, when I talk about how lovely my kids are, I'm actually magnifying my wife because she's their mother. She bore them, raised them, taught them, nurtured them. The success of my children is wrapped up in the success of my wife and in mine. And that's how Catholics think of it, right? So if I talk about Mary, I'm not taking away from Jesus. It's not a competition. Jesus is saying, you talked about my mom for 8 minutes, but you only talked about me for 5 minutes. You stole from me. That's not how it works. Mary says, my soul magnifies the Lord. Gospel of Luke. So when you see Mary, Jesus is magnified. When I learn about different saints and how Jesus saved them from certain sins, led them into persecutions, martyrdoms, and they were victorious, my fascination and appreciation for the grace of Jesus in them is an appreciation for Jesus Christ. It's not a competition. It's not a sibling rivalry. And once I finally understand that that's how I think about my own life and my parents and my family and my wife and my kids, I'm going to talk about my wife. I'm going to talk about my various children, and that's all good. And I'm going to talk about Jesus. I'm going to talk about his mother. Because if it was just talk about Jesus, the New Testament would just be Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. It would never talk about Peter or Paul or John or the Blessed Virgin Mary or Joseph or the three wise men or the shepherds or Mary Magdalene. You see, all of these things bring glory to Jesus. So that's the key. I'm glad you brought that up, and it gave me the opportunity to share my story on how my mindset changed on understanding how Jesus is understood in the Catholic Church with relation to sacraments, clergy, hierarchy, Pope, Mary, apostles, angels, saints. It's all one glory fest, right? Everything you hear is about the glory.